are no less terrible and no less darker. Their future do not look less bleaker than it was. It seems as though for us and for young people, children specifically, their lives are getting worse than they used to be before. I saw something some days ago on X, and it has got me questioning a lot of things. I think it was in Kenya, where I think it was the Minister for Health. I'm not so certain, but so a high-ranking official in Kenya was talking about how they're going to stop WHO vaccines in Kenya because they realized that some of the vaccines they got was affecting the fertility and the growth of the children in Kenya. I also remember a research that was done some days ago, some years ago, that talked about some, vaccines given to us. I won't call names specifically in west, I think northeastern Nigeria, and how it affected children. And every time you look at the Nigerian situation and you look at the future, you try to imagine what the future will look like for these kids, whether they're 5 years old or 10 or 11. It doesn't look good. Whether the educational system that gets worse every day, where JAM scores are reduced from 200 to 150 now, whether it's schools that don't get funded, whether it is state fund that people go take loans for to get education that cannot meet up to even African standard. For the average Nigerian child, the future doesn't look good. And while I want to be happy about Children's Day, I want to ask the government, the people who are put into office to lead us, are you really giving these children the future, or are you taking whatever future they have from them? Good morning.
Well, very deep questions to look at. Well, is it worth celebrating or not? Remember, over the years, even Independence Day has not really been given that flamboyant celebration like it should, like we used to know before 2010, 2011. Let me go back to those years. Remember the bomb blast that happened during the days of Goodluck Jonathan as president?
Yeah.
That actually hindered him. I think that was the first time we could not even celebrate something as such during the democratic era from 1999. And you get to see other situations come up. Like last year, it did not hold because of a rumored coup attempt that actually happened. But of course, the president says, okay, because of what Nigerians are going through, let it be low key. And we've also seen situations as such. But now, the question here is the lives of those children. From last year till now, we've had several kidnaps of children. Remember what happened? Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? Where children were actually, killed in a certain state somewhere in Nigeria. And how did they do it? A jerry can, this 25 liters, was burnt on them. How terrific that is. And you've seen situations where these marauders go into villages and attack kids, children who are innocent. They have no business with whatever anyone is doing. All they just know is they play, they eat, they sleep. But of course, they were killed at the end of the day. I think a whole lot has to be done. I know these kids they have a lot to think of. We have every reason not to celebrate the Children's Day tomorrow.
I just to add, Richard, as a young person growing up in Lagos, I remember Children's Day was fun for us. I remember we would go to, not parks, but go to this field where we do march past and we're excited. We wear white socks and white gloves. And in those moments, the world was simple.
Very well.
Nobody was scared of letting their kids go to places they don't know about. Whether it's I'm going to somewhere in Yaba to go celebrate sometimes. I'm going to amusement park. I think it was Yaba. The amusement park was in Yaba. It was all simple. I can't imagine parents right now sending their kids to anywhere
Everyone
5
is
kilometers
scared.
away from them.
Everyone is scared.
Everybody is scared.
And mind you, tomorrow is even public holiday.
Yes.
For the Eid Kabir celebration.
And I also remember how traveling as a kid was fun. We could go on excursions and our parents were not scared. Some months ago, kids that went to write their JAM exams were kidnapped. Last year, secondary school students were in their classes, in their hostels. They were kidnapped. They were running helter-skelter because of gunshots from terrorists. And again, I ask, if the kids who are supposed to build this nation to whatever El Dorado is supposed to look like, do not even know what the future looks like for them. If these kids are living with trauma every day, whether it's in Barakin Ladi or is in Riyom or is in Just Not, it seems like everywhere you turn, the young person, whether they are 5 years old or they are 15, cannot. You know that thing where you go to a house and everywhere is burning and the kids are sleeping because they do not care, because whatever happens, that is going to take care of it.
Of course.
I'm not sure kids can sleep anymore because they've seen and they've heard and they've experienced so much death and trauma that I wonder what our future looks like. And again, I say this, we might not understand how much trauma these people are going through until 20 years after, when they are more mature, when they are adults, and they cannot understand what normal life feels like. They cannot understand what it means like to go, to go from point A to point B without being scared. Because for every kid out there, me inclusive, because I'm a child, happy Children's Day to us. Hopefully, the world gets better.
All right, so hopefully the world gets better. It's just a major concern. Well, we'll wait to see what exactly happens. Like we told you, we have our guest here seated with us already, patiently waiting to come on. It's no other person, but of course, well, I don't just know how to put this, but of course, I'll put, like I said earlier, he has been in the academic sector for a very long time, and of course, he has gotten to the peak of it. Being a professor means you've gotten to the very end of the last rank, in the academics. Beside that, also, when it comes to civil society issues and governance, he has also played key roles in making sure Nigerians enjoy the benefits. I'm talking about another person, but Professor Chris Kwaja, a very popular voice. Good morning, sir.
Popular voice.
Yeah,
Good
of course.
morning, my brothers. Good morning, Nigerians.
Good to have you on the program this
Thank
morning,
you.
sir. Well, interesting to know that we are still in a democratic system, and of course, Nigerians have seen different style of governance from 1999 till date, from the Obasanjo regime down to Yar'Adua, who spent barely 3 years in office before he passed on. So, this man, Muhammadu Buhari, the late Muhammadu Buhari, also, and now Tinubu's regime, 27 years of uninterrupted democracy, whether Nigerians like it or not. We still have the right to vote, to choose for ourselves leaders. We still have the right to information. I think these two alone actually shows we are democratic. But of course, how democratic are we as a nation?
I think it's important to provide a historical trajectory to our journey when it comes to how we conceptualize and contextualize governance. And I'm leaving democracy hanging. I'm using the word governance. Nigeria, or the people of this country, have had a taste of three types of governance systems. The first was what you call the pre-colonial governance system, where traditional institutions played a major role in defining governance. Our traditional rulers were the face of governance when it comes to the kind of institutions that existed. Within that context, we people with vast land, and that land gave them what you see as the currency or the wealth that they were able to use to assert their own influence. In northern Nigeria, we had what was called the Sarakunas versus the Talakawas.
Yes.
And that Sarakuna versus the Talakawas defined the inequity and the class nature of governance. That it was basically a social compact between those who have, the Sarakunas, and those who don't have, the Talakawas, or the paupers, or the proletariats, and all that. The colonial government recognized the potency of that system in northern Nigeria. And that was why it maintained what we call indirect rule in northern Nigeria, allowing the traditional institutions to continue running their affairs on their behalf. The introduction of the native authorities system provided the strength for that kind of governance system, while in the south it was direct rule. The colonial government was directly involved. Post-colonial Nigeria witnessed the emergence of what we see as democratic government, where popular participation became the face of the governance system.
Yes.
People were empowered, sensitized, conscientized, and educated to be part of the government by electing and also presenting themselves for elections. By 1966, we saw a truncation 6 years after. So by 1966, we saw a truncation of that democratic consultation with well-meaning Nigerians. We don't know who they were. We are now taking over the reins of power. We are suspending the constitution. Political parties should go and all that. And we had the military being the face of government. And from 1966 to 1979, October 1st, the military held sway. And we had a slight interruption or slight takeover or relaunch where democracy staged a comeback with Shagari. And by 1984, the military took over. Today we're in a democracy. By 1999, from 1999 to date, we've had over 2 decades of uninterrupted military government.
Okay.
And this government is supposed to be defined, understood, appreciated by the word democratic government. Because all that you see and talk about governance, roads, health, any infrastructure you can imagine, security, they are all things that preoccupied the traditional institution under the pre-colonial government, the military government, and the democratic government. But what makes a system democratic is about the rule of law. It's about human rights. It's about people's participation in government. It's about recognizing the right of people to dissent, to disagree with what you do, and these people are able to provide constructive, credible alternatives. And within that context, politics is not war. Politics is about people of diverse ideologies coming together to present to Nigerians their own views, ambitions, aspirations, and what have you about what they think is best for them. And people, on the strength of the information that they have, are able to make informed, and get my word now, informed choices. And this can only happen when the democracy itself is not guided. Guided in the sense that the politicians are so desperate to the point that they begin to alter the rules of the game in a way that makes it difficult for the citizens to make informed choices, and that where this happens, you begin to see disenchantment with the system. You begin to see a slide or an erosion of public trust. Now, there are 2 sides to how democracies fail. The first is about political parties. Political parties are supposed to be the vehicle through which you access power. And these political parties are supposed to be organic in nature. They are supposed to be rooted in the people, because without people, you don't have a political party.
Yes.
And when we talk of people, we are talking about real people. You can see them, you can feel them, you can hear when they talk. You don't assume, you don't imagine, are they real? Are they the real people talking? Now, once a political party is able to put itself in place, it begins to aspire to govern. And that aspiration to govern is one that makes it present itself to people to be elected on the strength of what it can do, or on the strength of the credibility of the individuals that are driving that political party. That's the first pillar. The second pillar now is about governance. We've won elections. What infrastructure for governance do we have in place? How is that institution driving change? In 2009, Obama was in Cairo, and in his what you call the famous Obama Cairo speech, he said, Africa, you need strong institutions, not strong men. Which means the influence that individuals have on our system should give way to the extent that the institutions should rise above the influence of these individuals. The common concern you find among citizens today is that even if we vote, will it count?
A big question.
Even if I report you to the police, will they do anything about it? Even if the criminals come, will the security agencies and agents do anything about it? Even if I go to court, will I get justice? And you recall the famous Michael Zuckerman article, we meet in court,
Yes.
or go to court. Somebody says, oh, rig the election and go to court. The audacity of even telling you to go to court is informed by the fact that they know that the court is populated by crippled individuals. And when I say crippled now, out of respect for people with disability, I'm talking about justices and judges and magistrates that are not able to dispense justice because they are compromised. And one of the major defining feature of our democracy over time not wake up, because bandits, criminals might come. I go to the hospital with this mindset that let me just go. I know if I go by 8, only God knows when I will return. Because you go to a hospital, public institution, by 8, it takes you 2 hours to get your card. It takes you 2 hours to pay money at the pharmacy or lab. It takes you 3 days or 1 week to even get a simple result. It takes you almost a month to register for surgery. No light. The leadership is not there.
From your explanation, should we just say we've gone down the drain, we've retrogressed?
I don't want to run into this confusion of binaries,
Okay.
of yes, no first.
Okay.
I'm presenting the reality on the ground.
True.
To see, because for me as an individual, my job as a public intellectual is not just to speak about who is wrong but it's about what is wrong and
what
how
is
we
right.
can collectively remedy the situation. I'm just giving you an example of health.
Yes.
Now, I am currently leading a project, and that project targets a review or assessment of public institutions in terms of how well they are fared under our democracy. And the first institution we have targeted, and last month I had the opportunity of meeting with the leadership of that institution. That's the Federal Character Commission. The Federal Character Commission was established in 1996. By who? General Sani Abacha, of all people, a military man who believed in equity and indivisibility of the Nigerian state. Forget about his military khaki.
Yes.
he took that bold decision to say, we need a federal character principle, and that should be enshrined in the Constitution of Nigeria to make it mandatory for public institutions to reflect the diversity of Nigeria. Now, the Federal Character Commission over time has focused on recruitments and appointments. But one area today we are discussing with them is to say, by virtue of the law establishing the Federal Character Commission, it can also prosecute individuals and institutions that violate federal character principle. And it was even new to so many people in the room that day. 2, the Federal Character Commission also is empowered to monitor the allocation of projects across the country. For instance, if you are budgeting for roads under the 2026 budget
Yes.
of the federal government, how many percent goes to the southeast? How many percent goes to the southwest, south, northeast, north central, and northwest? There must be equity. You cannot spend 1 trillion in region A while you are spending 1 billion in region B. That is inequity. Now, that's what public institutions are supposed to do. The thing about a conversation of this nature about democratic governance is that we focus more on elections, we focus more on the National Assembly. We forget that there are institutions with powers and resources to implement or undertake or provide services. And these services are tied to our democracy. National Human Rights Commission, for instance, is one of the core institutions that highlights and celebrates the fact that Nigeria's democracy is functional. To what extent is the National Human Rights Commission responding to issues around the rule of law and human rights violations? What happened to the report of the NSAS, the commissions of inquiry, the committees that were set up by all the states of the federation and the federal government? What happened to the recommendations of the committees? How many states have implemented these recommendations? This is one good example of what has happened. You come back to public corruption. And that's why you sit and watch individuals, even in the recent primaries that have happened, individuals with huge corruption cases. I know that the law says people are innocent until found guilty. How do you explain in Nigeria the fact that someone accused of corruption is undergoing that process for 3 years, 10 years? He goes into public office, spends at most 8 years, and that case is still on. The speedy dispensation of justice is very central to building public trust in our democracy. And once it is not there, you are at a loss as to whether or not the votes you cast really count. The other example is across the country.
Yes.
We've had cases of mishaps, airstrikes, civilian populations killed. It becomes an internal affair of the Air Force. They set up their committees. No public discussion, no public accountability. The Air Force is not accountable to anyone to say, fellow Nigerians, there was a mishap, and this was what caused it. And these are the decisions we have taken going forward on how to deal with it.
Well, of course.
That's
Sorry. I think I've heard government officials mention clearly, even on this very platform, that security issues are not what you discuss publicly. In fact, they use the famous terminology. Security issues is not an issue for the market.
Yeah, but I've heard that.
Yes.
But again, that's also my area, and I've challenged many of them. I said no. As long as public resources, get my word, as long as public resources is used to fund security,
Yes.
there must be accountability for that, because public resources are taxpayers' money. All the special task forces across the country, there has been cases of whether direct or indirect culpability of commanders and other ranks in the theater of conflict. Citizens who are the victims have the right to explanations. Accountability is very key, and that's why we talk about what? Security sector governance from the perspective of the power of the National Assembly, the power of civil society, the power of the National Human Rights Commission, the power of the media to ask questions. You cannot say security is restrictive, it's not everybody's business, yet you go to the same National Assembly, sit before elected legislators and defend your budget. Then when it comes to spending the money, you say it cannot be discussed publicly. No, there are operational issues. We know that. But those issues that require explanation, you must explain.
Right. I want us to walk back a bit because you've talked about, which is quite beautiful, the historical movements from the 1960s to where we are. Some would argue that our democracy. Some would argue that our democracy is the way it is, because of a number of things. In one interview Chinua Achebe, Prof, conducted some years ago, he said that Nigeria, by its colonial masters, wasn't handed democracy, and therefore it is unfair to expect us as a people to be democratic because we were not given democracy. He explained in that interview that we were ruled by dictatorship, therefore we didn't have any nursery ground to learn how to be democratic. Do you agree with that?
I totally disagree with that viewpoint.
And why?
I've studied politics. I'm a political scientist, and I will explain. One, the pre-colonial systems I talked about. Pick the Igbo system. It was highly republican. It was highly democratic because it gave people power. The chiefs were not just there as the lords. People had a say. When the colonial government handed over by 1960, let's not forget that by 1959, all was set for Nigeria to move to a democracy. And that was when Nnamdi Azikiwe became the governor general, while Tafawa Balewa became the prime minister. We practiced democracy for 6 good years before the military took over. What Achebe meant was not about the institutions. It was more about the attitudes of people, the kind of, the quality and the way the people managed democracy. Because I recall, if you read one of his books about the trouble with Nigeria, where he came back to talk about leadership, that it's about leadership. And we don't have problems with the institutions. We don't. But we have problem with the individuals and their cronies that are driving the institutions. And I'll give you an example for you in the media, for us in civil society, for us in the academia. What kind of social audits are we doing in identifying public institutions and running a proper assessment of the quality of that institution in terms of the kind of individuals that are driving those institutions, the mandate of the institutions, and how the institutions are able to deliver on their mandate. That's governance. And that's the key role that the media should play. And it's a proactive one. You see, the thing about being reactive is that you wait until there's a problem with the institution, then you start running audits of how past leaders and what have you have mismanaged the place. Now, the media has what you call an agenda setting role.
True.
In governance. And what an agenda setting role does in a democracy like ours is that it conducts a horizon scanning. You scan the horizon in the context of what should be the role of the institution. Now, elections, party primaries. What role did the media play, for instance, in setting specific benchmarks? I'm not saying the media did not, but I'm just raising it. What role did the media play in setting specific benchmarks about the quality of persons that should come? How elections or primaries or congresses should be conducted? What should be the future of the country or the state? And that kind of engagement, if you listen, you watch CNN, you watch Al Jazeera, you watch BBC. I'm not using that to compare you,
Of course.
because of the weight and the huge resources they have. I understand the challenges you face here in Nigeria. Sometimes even press freedom on its own is a problem.
It's a problem.
Because when you say ABC, the next thing you are invited by either the police or by government officials to come and explain and all that. We understand that. And the moment you threaten the media in our democracy, then that democracy is lost. If you want to measure, and that's why when you look at or when you follow conversations about the quality of governance or democracy, they say measure it by the level of press freedom. And the level of press freedom is simply about how the media or the press positions itself to be the voice of the voiceless, positions itself to be the agenda setter for governance. Sometimes you also confront this situation of a politicized media.
True.
Once you become politicized, then it weakens your credibility. It weakens your ability to be a neutral arbiter. I've had instances where some politicians will tell you, if this media calls me, I won't go.
Yeah.
If this one calls me, I will go. All is because of what? These biases.
True.
But sometimes they don't even want to go, not because the media is biased, but maybe they don't even have anything to say, or they are afraid of questioning. The unfortunate part about what we are discussing today when it comes to the effectiveness is also about the relationship between elected or appointed persons under a democracy and the people who expect good governance. The energy is spent in press releases and press conferences. When you invite them for engagements like this, they don't even want to come. Or they will tell you, give me the questions before I come. That's not leadership. As a leader, at any point in time you wake me up or you approach me, I should be able to explain what I'm doing. That's the quality of leadership that we need.
I think in all you've said now, you've just clearly, you've actually expatiated on the fact that we have good institutions, right? But the kind of people that occupy those offices, that actually take charge of those offices, that lead those offices, are the ones. Are the ones corrupting the system. We have a popular say in Nigeria that says Nigerians or Africans are known with quite a number of good laws, very effective on paper. Laws that when they read to you, if you commit a crime, just know that you are gone. But again, you wonder exactly on who those laws work on. Is it the bourgeoisies or the proletarians? I'm talking about the rich or the poor this time. Is it the master or the slave? Now, we've seen those very scenarios. Now, before we take calls, I just want to know exactly, as just in 1 minute, I just want to know, as Nigerians, as Africans, what has been our biggest challenges? Is it the citizens' choices of leadership or the politicians who appear as good people at the start, but when they get into office, they change?
It's a combination of the two.
But who has the larger portion of the blame?
I think the larger portion is the people,
Why?
because they are more in number. There's more in number. Now, I was privileged to aspire for the senatorial seats, Plateau North. And my mantra was voices. And I spent quite some time engaging people. And I discovered that investing in their voices will be a huge investment. There will be return on investment, not in business sense now, but in terms of impact.
When you say invest in a voice, what exactly do you mean?
Yeah, educating them,
Okay.
sensitizing them, conscientizing them on their rights to make informed decisions about their future. And that when people are informed about who they are and the power of their collective voices, they can make change happen. The people that control the system are just less than 5% of the total population. And I'll give just pick example here, Plateau. We have one governor, one deputy governor, 24 members in the House of Assembly, maybe 20 commissioners, PAMSECs, councillors, people that are actually in office are just about 1% of the entire population. Go to Abuja, the federal government, is the same thing. Go to the local government, is the same thing. So how do you explain a situation whereby one population holds 99%, 1% of population holds 99%.
But some would argue that that's possible. Like you said in your introduction, when you're speaking earlier about back in the days in the northern parts where they had those who were top and those who were followers. If this 1%, like you said, have the financial resources, have the political resources, and have the social power, it is easier for them to control the rest of the 99%.
I will explain. I have studied the pre-colonial Nigerian government, not just studying in terms of reading.
Yes.
I have visited. I think out of the 36 states of this country and Abuja 37, I have been physically to 34. And there is no state in northern Nigeria that I have not been to. And not just passing, but going to and conducting studies. And I'll give you an example, concrete one. When the Northern Element Progressive Union was established, NEPU, under Aminu Kano, it was to challenge feudalism. And Aminu Kano mobilized people. And Aminu Kano did that, knowing fully well that an informed population was very central. And that informed population have been very key to the politics of Kano to this moment. And that's why you have the Aminu Kano Airport, you have the Aminu Kano Teaching Hospital. In Kano, he did not hold any public office, but he had a critical mass of people who believed in him. And because of that, they were able to checkmate many of the traditional rulers. That's one. Two, Ahmadu Bello. Ahmadu Bello was not a traditional ruler. And Ahmadu Bello was not a religious leader. He was a pure politician. His first job was a classroom teacher in Sokoto. Sardauna Sokoto is a title. It's a chieftaincy title. Not a traditional title in the sense of having a palace. His home, his residence in Kaduna was not a palace. I've been to all that. Now, Ahmadu Bello invested heavily in fighting the traditional rulers that were oppressing the poor. And under his leadership, many traditional rulers were suspended, many were deposed because of corruption associated with tax, local tax. That's an example. Became popular and he gained the kind of followership that you see in the north today. And many other people continue to celebrate that particular virtue. So it's about voices. So there are people within the system who also have the money. You see, sometimes when we say, oh, the 1% have the resources, we forget that there are people that are outside that 1% or within the 1% sometimes that are not happy with what the other group members of the group are doing. Now, we celebrate Karl Marx. I studied Marxism in the university and I still apply that in my work every day. We celebrate Karl Marx for being the face of what? Speaking against oppression. We forget that Karl Marx was supported, encouraged, and mobilized by an industrialist called Friedrich Engels. He provided the resources. He was an industrialist, but he was concerned about exploitation. And since Karl Marx was the face of what he saw as the good society, he needed to invest in Karl Marx to propagate, to amplify the voice of Karl Marx. Now, that's what we are supposed to be doing. What you are doing today as a media is that you are using your resources to empower citizens. Now, resources is not financial. There are tangible and non-tangible resources. How do we quantify the voice that you are giving people by bringing them here to come and speak? It's huge. It's more than a 10 million naira that somebody will give. And if you want to appreciate what the media can do, go to Rwanda in the 1990s. The genocide in Rwanda was propelled and sustained and perpetuated by the media because certain persons knew that people relied on the media, and they used the media to sell hate. So that's the power that you bring to our society. And there are many individuals out there within the system that have this kind of capacity to mobilize people and get them to do what is right. And I'm sure in your communities You had them before. Go to Lagos, the Iyaloja, for instance. It's just market. Adedubu, as controversial as he was, the Amala politics in Oyo, he understood that he needed to provide that space. So people were coming to his house. They were not just eating Amala. They were playing politics. And he was able to use the people and get what he wants. Now, the danger of it is for us to just be careful or cautious about how people instrumentalize and weaponize voices. Because there are positives and there are negatives. And the negatives are always associated with how certain individuals know that this population is gullible. Today, the biggest culprits are our religious leaders, not even the politicians.
All right.
Because it's only in a church and a mosque that somebody preaches. Nobody asks questions. Whatever he says, you accept. If you have contrary view, you keep quiet and go out and complain. But you don't complain in
the church.
Now, in the church and the mosque, you find that. Now, these situations, for instance, have given rise to many individuals unleash people out to go and fight for what they are not supposed to fight for. So that's it. Now, what the Voices thing tried to do was to empower people to know that with their power, they can resist individuals who want to drag them on the wrong path. And they can speak for themselves.
All right.
And they can say, yes, we know what we want. Because sometimes it is assumed that people don't know what they want.
All
Which
right.
is false. They know what they want.
All right, Prof, for the want of time, I think we'll just take some few social media comments now, and we'll try to wrap up because we have less than 2 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
On Facebook, Bangai Dalung says, it's unfortunate that the institution is more powerful than the system. When the system cannot checkmate itself, it allows individuals with powers to decide who gets what, how, and when. Dashe says, it is so unfortunate that we keep on yearning about democracy without any impact on the citizens. Left for me, I don't see this country as a democratic society because it is just about some few group of people enriching themselves with their families and friends. I wish to go back to military regime again, he says. Well, that is this person's comment. Finally, MC Boss MCs goes, this is the worst government since Nigeria started. And finally, Manzoa Ayuba goes, which one is uninterrupted democracy? The APC and Tinubu governments are worse than the military era. May God help us in this country. And it says, Richard, may God bless you and your new home.
Amen. Thank you so much, Bulus Treasure Usman, and Uhoman, not Usman, Uhoman, and the other person that wished me well. Thank you so much. I think I've been seeing this message since yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let me finally read one more because this one is quite interesting. Matthew Rina goes, as Nigeria makes 27 years since 1999 transition, the democratic journey has delivered continuity but not always commensurate progress, with governance often marked by policy inconsistency, institutional fragility, and uneven development outcomes. Albert Akaya Dagza as a democracy has not been where it was 27 years ago, but it definitely has not improved to fit our system and ideology as a people.
Well, we'll surely have more of this conversation. Professor Chris Kwaja, of course, will not exhaust this. This time is too short for him. We'll surely look out for more time to talk about it because we need more of this to actually have a background. Of course, also set the ball rolling when it comes to our democracy. Thank you so much for being a part of the show today, sir.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you, Prof.
My pleasure.
Well, we have to give way for the news to come by 10 o'clock. Yeah, if you can find out.
Like I always say, forgive your oppressors if you must, but do not forget what they've done to
That's
you.
the point.
All right. Thank you so much for staying tuned. Yeah. We'll meet tomorrow for the Children's Day. Bye. My name is Richard Badu.
Attention, please. We've switched to what radio means. This is a whole new experience. Radio, more urban and relating.
101.9 KFM. Hey, boss don't fool me. Music they jam. Person they holler for change. But driver no send because that change got sweet.